In the mid-1900s, communism was on a rise in Russia. What does communism mean? To put it in a nutshell, religion means absolutely nothing. We have no sentiments towards religion. Because of which Islam was banned from the public eye. You were not allowed to recite the Quran. You were not allowed to pray Salah openly. You were not allowed to advocate and propagate Islam openly. But the question is, this same place, the Soviet Union, these states, this is the place where Imam Bukhari, Imam Tirmidhi, Imam Abu Dawud, the great scholars of Hadith, they were born and they were raised and they studied and taught Hadith. But the same place eventually became the hotbed of disbelief, and Islam was marginalized and put to the side. But there were individuals who had a concern in their heart. How can we pass on Islam to our youth? What did they do? Subhanallah. Like I said, a 90-year-old Russian Muslim, he explains that they build a very large structure. They build a structure and they put in the front secular school. A secular school where everyone would come and study. But what they did was they made the walls such that behind the sheetrock, you had a separate chamber, a secret room that was soundproof. They would bring the youngsters inside and make them into two groups. One group would be outside, one group would be inside. 6 months, one group stays on the inside, 6 months, one group stays on the outside. What did the people on the outside do? They kept a poster of Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union, of Russia at that time. They kept liquor bottles, they kept pictures of anything that had nothing to do with Islam. But behind that, they had Huffaz memorizing the Quran. 6 months, these Huffaz would memorize the Quran. They would go to the front, the other Huffaz would go in the back and they would memorize the Quran. And like this circle, under a rule that had nothing to do with Islam, they wanted to destroy Islam, they produced dozens of Huffaz. Subhanallah. Think about it this way. When the effort is against Islam, if Allah wants, He can produce countless Muslims and Huffaz. When the effort is in support of Islam, if there's no one willing to take up the effort, then Islam can die away. So the question again is not, will the Quran be preserved? The question is, will I be fortunate enough to be among those individuals who will be selected for this? I'll mention one more story, then I'll get to the main topic and conclude. Ibn Abi Dunya, rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions a story. What's the story? He says that two people, they met in the marketplace. And we know that the marketplace in the sight of Allah is one of the most disgusting places. Not because intrinsically it is bad, but because people are negligent and people lie frequently in the marketplace. So, two people, they met. And they said to one another that we have a practice that we come and we work every day and we leave by the end of the day, but we don't remember Allah. We've been doing this for many years. Today, let's remember Allah just for 2 minutes. Let's remember Allah for just 2 minutes. So they're sitting down and they're talking for 2 minutes and they conclude their conversation and they go back to their business. The next day, the person finds out that his friend passes away. One of them, they pass away and they die. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, one died. Now, the other friend, he's very conscious and he's very worried. What happened to my friend? That my friend, he was with me, is he in Jannah or not? So he had a dream. And he sees his friend, so he asks him that, what did Allah do? Did He forgive you? And he says, yes, Allah forgave me. But he asked him, why did Allah forgive you? He said, Allah forgave me even though I never worshipped Him, even though I never fully practiced as a Muslim. Those 2 minutes that we spend talking about Allah gave me admission into Jannah. But the ulama explain, why was he put into Jannah for those 2 minutes? The reason why he was put into Jannah for those 2 minutes is not because 2 minutes is valuable. It's because he used 2 valuable minutes in the midst among negligence. Everybody around him is turning away from Allah. He sacrificed 2 minutes to turn towards Allah. Allah forgave him just because of that. What does these 2 things that teach us? 3 things I mentioned. 1, the statistics. 23% of Muslims growing up in America no longer identify as Muslims. And many of us here can identify people in our own family who have confessed to this. Number one. Number two, that Allah will preserve his faith. The question is, will I participate or not? And number three, that when something is done in the middle of negligence, when they're surrounded by disbelief, when you do something in the middle of that, it will be multiplied. What do we learn from this? Number one, we need to preserve the faith of our future generation. That what can we do to ensure that my child growing up in Jackson Heights, my child growing up in New York, in America, in the West, will not fall under the 23%. What does 23% mean? That every four of us, one of us are likely to have someone in our family who can fall to that. We need to produce an educational system, a schooling system for that group of individuals so that when they come to school, they develop a Muslim identity. It is that small Muslim identity that can preserve them slipping and losing their faith. So the first thing, we need to prepare our future generation. Because alhamdulillah, we may say we have iman, our parents have iman, but who's going to care about our children? Number two, this does not have to simply be that I teach my child to read Quran. We need to have a fortified educational system, and that is something alhamdulillah, An-Noor Cultural Center is trying to provide. That they are providing education to a group of individuals who most people are not giving that concern to. The next generation. Who's the next generation? The category beneath 20 years old. Who's going to take care of them? Because I can think that my son is born with the name Muhammad, or his name or her name is Zainab, but I don't know what's really inside of their heart. So two things. And the final thing, and I'll conclude with this inshallah, is that alhamdulillah, compared to other states, in New York we have a large Muslim body and we have people who are concerned for their faith. While we still have this strength, we should not allow for it to go away. When there's an endeavor taking place, subhanAllah, you travel to some cities and states, there are many professional, many wealthy communities, but nobody's interested in starting initiatives. Nobody wants to do things because they're like, you know what, alhamdulillah, I'm comfortable, my family's comfortable. But in New York, alhamdulillah, there's so many initiatives. So when Allah says He's preserving this faith, He is going to select individuals. My question is, it's not the Islam being preserved, will I take a role and part in Islam being preserved? So inshallah, we should try our best, physically, emotionally, financially, whatever the case may be, to support initiatives such as this, because this is not only for me and you, for our families, it is for the upcoming generation. At times they talk about the elderly man who said, should I plant a seed? And he was advised, yes, plant the seed because you may not reap the fruits, but when you pass away, generations to come will reap that fruit. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless this community. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take An-Noor from strength to strength. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward Mufti Ismail for the great initiative that he took place. Think about Jackson Heights, subhanAllah. The amount of Muslims that you have in 1 square feet in Jackson Heights, you may not have in the rest of America. There's just that many people. We're filled with Muslims over here. But if we really think about it, what's happening in Jackson Heights? MashaAllah, we have some sweet shops, we have some restaurants, we have enough places to eat, alhamdulillah, halal we have. But in terms of educational efforts, there's hardly anything. And what can we do to ensure that at least in a place where we're proliferated, we're so dense with Muslims, we can provide something for that generation? And this is one such effort. So we should try our best to fall under that banner and push it forward. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward everybody on this blessed night where the Quran was completed, a definite miracle. And the month of Ramadan is definitely coming to an end as well. So Allah reward one and all, and Allah bless this community. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.